Hello dreamers and welcome back. Welcome back, welcome back. I know you definitely missed me. In today's tutorial we'll see the first part of this fantastic little movie. I will try to make you understand the three-dimensional effect of parallax. What a complicated name. The name is a bit complicated, but I let you judge the difficulty if you decide to try it. For me it became easy after I did it, of course, but I'm already working on something even more difficult that you will see soon. About the work I'm doing, I think that from now on the tutorials will come out every 2 weeks. This allows me to work calmly and well. Above all, I want these tutorials to be of quality first of all, to give you the opportunity to better understand my projects. Coming back to this work, it was an incredible challenge, and managing to theme all this was not easy, but I did it. There are many elements, especially large ones. The easiest part is definitely Luffy, but we will see it in the next tutorial. Today the background will accompany us on our frozen journey, so I advise you to cover yourself well. Small parenthesis, a percentage of people who watch the channel are not yet subscribed. Please subscribe to the channel if you want. It doesn't cost you anything. For me, it's worth a lot. In today's tutorial we will therefore go and see what the elements here in the background are. I'm going to zoom out a bit. This project is really big. Dreams allow us to work a lot outside the camera, and by activating the drawing mode we can see the elements that make up the project clearly and not obscured. This is a very useful feature that allows us to always have the whole project under our eyes. I was able to study the behavior of the shapes moving in the background to get the best result. In the past, with applications like Calipeg, this wasn't possible. Now honestly, I don't know. It's been a while since I used it. Dreams has stolen my soul. Maybe in the future it would be nice to make a comparison video between the two apps. What do you think? Do you use Calipeg? First of all, to make you understand better, I will remove some levels that we don't need. For now, the first thing we focus on is the surface of the eyes. Maybe I could have put a few less levels, but I switched for this project. Even Dreams must switch. I remove the mountains in the background, which create this beautiful mirror effect on the eyes. They are two groups, practically the one below inverted, but we'll see them later. The focus for now on this huge level of eyes that serves to create the three-dimensional effect. As we'll see, there will be 3 of these levels. The first one you see from the beginning will almost disappear in the timeline, but it's the basis of the fake 3D movement, as if the camera were filming the scene from above. With the tools that Dreams provide us, I was able to create this effect. The first level has this shape. To make it used a nice brush on Procreate. I needed a rectangle to get this movement. I choose to draw it on Procreate as you see here. To make the brush textures detail, the canvas here on Procreate is 12,000 by 10,000 pixels. The interesting thing about this brush is that it allows us to give transparency to what is underneath. Obtained this shape and imported it on Dreams. Let's see what I did with it. The first thing that catches the eye, I used the distortion tool, but the initial keyframe is not at 0 seconds, but set at -7 seconds. This is because at the beginning of the film the scene must already be in motion. The ground where the motorbike runs must already be moving, and with the possibility of positioning the initial keyframe in negative, this is possible. If I press play, as you can see, the ground is already moving. With this system and with the camera that slowly zoom on Luffy, the scene is dynamic. But now let's go and see what the movements of this shape are. First of all, let's open the track of the move and scale tool of the layer. In addition to the distortion movement that we see after, the terrain moves from right to left. The sequence goes on. The motorbike remains still in the center of the screen, so as not to distract the viewer from the background. So the first value that changes from start to finish is the displacement of the x-axis. Important thing about this movement is that the trend curve must be linear to keep it constant. If you don't know what I'm talking about, in a previous tutorial I explained the trend curves. I suggest you go and get it. But to make it short here, the movement from right to left must be linear. I can choose between 4 types of trend curves here on Dreams. The other 3, however, in this case are not good, because they have a different speed at the beginning and at the end, or in both cases. And for this reason the movement would not have remained constant. When the camera zooms in, the floor is crushed to create the illusion of three-dimensionality. By resizing the shape on the y-axis you can achieve this result. The scaling has the same timing. As the camera movement, the initial keyframe will have to match from point 0 to the point where the bike is in the foreground. To obtain this type of downward scaling, the anchor point of the shape will have to be exactly at the base. As we will see later, the horizon above is flattened, and at that point the base of the mountains will be positioned as you can observe in the diagram from another angle. The ground with this type of movement is crushed downwards. The mountains behind come down, the camera remains fixed, with only heading towards the protagonist. You always have to think the opposite way compared to, for example, a 3D software like Blender, where to obtain a result like that I will have to move the camera in the 3D environment. In this case, instead it is the elements that make up the scene that have to be transformed. These are the first 2 animations applied to the ground. Now let's get to the third one, the distortion. Here's basically because it allows you to keep the ground moving, as we said before, starting in negative, distorted like this at the initial keyframe. The goal is essentially this: by distorting the terrain from the start point to the end, in this way, by translating the vertices below. As we see here, if I move the final keyframe, the level moves in the opposite direction. I like your move, I like your move, I like your move, I like you. Move! Best singer! Let's get serious. But why add this distortion too? The distortion tool here allows me to create a lateral scrolling of the foreground plane by moving the bottom vertices of the shape, while what is in the background moves more slowly. This way it seems that the ground in the foreground is moving quickly, while what we see in the background is moving more slowly. This is what the eye perceives. For example, if we have 2 objects moving at the same speed, but one is closer to our eyes, it will appear much faster. If the slice of orange is far away, our field of vision is wider, and therefore it will appear to move more slowly. But if instead it's closer to us, the field of vision is narrower, and therefore it will appear to pass before our eyes much faster. With the distortion tool I applied this concept to the ground, and the result is incredible. On this layer I added some opacity filters. In the initial part it will be very visible, with a high percentage of opacity. 80% at the beginning. It goes up to 100% here to create a bit of glow, as if it were reflecting. In the end it will be less visible, also because it will be almost replaced by another level. But first I tell you about yet another level that we find under the first layer of eyes. And it's basically the same, but as you can see it's smaller than the one above. The goal was to add another layer underneath with a lower opacity than the first. as if there was another layer of ice underneath. This further accentuates the three-dimensionality of the environment. Even in this case, being lower, this layer moves more slowly than the one above. Here you can better appreciate the fact the surface layer passes faster than the one underneath. The opacity filter in this case already starts at 50%. The level below should not distract the viewer too much, but is a detail that gives harmony to the movement. And in the end it will be very little visible. The last difference with the level above, as for the distortion tool, also the movement on the x-axis starts in negative. At the beginning of the timeline I already wanted it in motion. Imagine two sheets of paper one above the other that move, for example, to the left. If I look at them from above, the farthest one should already seem to be moving, compared to the one closest to us, even if it will slide more slowly. To do this, just start moving X in negative here on Dreams. So remember that if you want a parallax effect like this, you have to use the tools that Dreams provide us in a creative way. Thinking in 3D in a 2D environment may not be easy, but the basic concept is that in 2D it's the shapes that have to move and adapt to the camera. Now that we have seen how to achieve this effect, at this point the ground under the motorbike, especially in the foreground, does not flow quickly enough. In this way it seems that the wheels are sliding on the ice. I made various attempts to try to speed up the level of ice under the wheels as much as possible, that is in the foreground, but by doing so I would have speeded up the ice in the background too much. It wasn't what I wanted, so I chose to add a third level under the wheels to make the effect perfect. I would have preferred to leave a single level to create this effect, but I had to make a compromise, and therefore add this third level that flows under the wheels to give the sensation of speed. Let's remember that we are still on a 2D animation app, and in theory it's not made for 3D. But with this compromise I achieved the goal. The part of the ground that is the background moves more slowly, and with this level that flows quickly underneath, everything is perfect. If we open the motion track, as you can see, the first keyframe of X starts a little before the end of the scaling effect. Opacity is also important. The level should appear gradually, but at the point of resizing. The viewer's eyes remains focused on Luffy, and the ground in the foreground begins to appear. The level works perfectly, without making you feel any sensation of detachment, but rather making you perceive the speed of the motorbike. I had to make a compromise here to get the result, but the final effect I would say is perfect. If you have ideas to do it in some other way, write in the comments. The last element for the parallax effect is composed of the mountains in the background. The whole group is made up of mountains and clouds. This group is then duplicated and inverted underneath to create this mirror effect. The group must remain fixed on the horizon line with the change of shot, so I went to insert a movement animation on x-axis. But the most important factor is the resizing at the beginning in the timeline. Everything is bigger, while at the change of shot it gets smaller, as if to accentuate the depth of the scene. With this effect it seems that the camera gets closer to the protagonist in the first part, and then puts the elements in the background in a wider field of vision. Here you can better perceive the depth that is created with this effect. Now let's go and see inside the group. Even the mountains move. Even the mountains can walk. I removed Luffy for now so you can see the walking mountains better. Our protagonist seems to be circumnavigating those mountains down there, as if it were going in a circle. To achieve this effect, the mountain in the foreground moves to the left. The central mass remains still, acting as a fulcrum at the center. The mountains behind will move in the opposite direction instead, and therefore to the right. This diagram helps you understand better. Same goes for clouds. Remember to think in 3D even in situations like this to create even more interesting effects. We'll come back later with the parallax effect in the next tutorials. As I told you, I'm working on something new and I think really interesting. Back to today's project, I added this smoke that passes in front and behind Luffy to make the scene more organic and give even more of sense of speed. In the foreground, the same thing applies here as for the ground. What moves must be faster. Too quickly, move away from the field of vision. Is a bit of blur. The smoke in the foreground moves on X very quickly. As you can see, they are close together, one after the other. The elements that are in the background flow more slowly. This effect also accentuates the three-dimensionality of the scene and, as I said before, makes everything more organic. Compared to the ones above, these elements take twice as long to disappear. Make the most of the tools that Dreams provide us, and as I always say, details like this make the difference. Appreciate the effect it creates, giving the perfect sensation of speed. Well, Dreamers, we have come to the end of this fantastic tutorial on the parallax effect. I hope it will be useful for your future projects. I invite you to remember to take advantage of all the tools that Dreams provide us to obtain incredible results in a 2D work environment. With your imagination, you will go far, and it can also be a stimulus to approach completely 3D software such as Blender. If something is not clear to you, write in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and